Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a senior professional and an expert in project management from San Diego, California, USA, Mr. Zach Herman. Zach, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's
Thank
great
you.
to be here.
Thank you. Zach is a director, IT project management office at UC San Diego Health. He's an author of a book titled Project Management Made Practical. So, Zach, before we come to your book, a few questions for you. You have over
Yeah.
20 years of experience in portfolio management and a decade in leadership. What first drew you into the field of project management?
An accident, to be
Hmm.
honest with you. I didn't know I was in project management until about 5 years into the field, which is one of the reasons why I do some of these other things like teach and do talks on project management because I just kind of fell into this field. I was lucky that I had a mentor that told me, what we do is project management, and
Hmm.
that came about because we were at four companies before my current company, and this person was telling me they were studying for the PMP exam, the project management professional exam, and I said, why are you doing that? And they said it's because that's what we do. We're project managers, and the light bulb went off. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
we actually have a defined career, and
Right.
kind of leaned into it after that, and
Hmm.
the world, at least from a career perspective, opened up a little bit there. I
Yes.
was able to do a lot more.
Fascinating. And as director of the project management office at the UC San Diego Health, what has been one of the most transformative projects you have led?
So we have. I'm racking my brain here because we've had a couple of them. So um, I'll list one that hopefully doesn't get me beat up. But during COVID,
Hmm.
we rolled out a product here, a device in California, and it was called CA Notify, and
Hmm.
it essentially would, by Bluetooth, not by tracking. It didn't put anything on anybody's phone they didn't want. By Bluetooth, it would alert you if you came in contact with somebody who tested positive for COVID-19.
Hmm.
My role in that effort was we had a very, very small window to spin up a call center to support, potentially 20 to 40 million Californians calling in, asking for help,
Hmm.
looking for technical support.
Hmm.
And we had 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks to spin
Wow.
up that call center. So that was during Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. So
Amazing.
that was a pretty intense effort that
Wow.
I was able to
Wow.
stamp.
Well, you probably have another book on you inside you for that particular experience. But Zach, you're also an adjunct professor. How has teaching shaped your own approach to leadership and project management?
I think I love teaching. I think it's fun for one. Like I actually love it. It's also a way for me to kind of give back. Project management. You implement something, you do something, and you move on. And it's temporary, right? It's the definition of a project is it's
Hmm.
temporary. So teaching, I think, helps me really grow some roots in the field that I'm in because everything else that I do is temporary.
Hmm.
And how that translates over is, um, at least when it comes to being a leader, I like to really coach and take more of a servant leadership approach with my staff. I feel like I owe it to them to help coach and mentor and help them hopefully prevent a lot of the mistakes
Hmm.
that I did when I was newer in the field, because that's the best way, in my opinion, to learn and I mean to not make mistakes is to learn from either your mistakes or somebody else's mistakes, and
Mm.
don't do that. So
Mm.
that's how I like to kind of carry it
Well
over.
said. Great response. Thank you. Zach, now let's talk about your book, Project Management Made Practical. Tell me about your book and what was the inspiration to write it?
So about 6 or 7 years ago, I started doing a a little bit a workshop that I actually developed with my current senior leader and one of my mentors. Her name's Nicole May. We created this workshop together for project managers that weren't project managers. They're non-project managers. They might work in finance or some other field, but they were expected to lead projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to do this workshop that we developed, and it kind of evolved over time. And about 2 years after that, it started to morph into um, more of my own thing. We kind of laid the roots together. It started to morph into something else. And I started to do more and more of these talks on project management for people that weren't project managers. And every kind of time I would do one of these talks, somebody would say, "Well, do you have a book? Do you have like a manual that, because this is
Mm.
helpful?"
Mm.
And that was kind of where the idea started. And it just kind of, it's taken me probably a little bit longer than I wanted to put this out there, but we got there.
Yeah, absolutely. And tell me what makes project management practical as opposed to purely theoretical?
So I think one of the things we do in the industry that's a disservice to a lot of people is we over engineer project management.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we try to make it a little bit more complicated than it needs to be, when in reality everybody has been a project manager likely in their life at some
Yeah.
point, whether it's managing a home project, right? Planning out and executing your shopping list for the groceries is a
Mm.
project in
Mm.
itself. And I think that when we kind of strip back the fact that it's not as intense as it needs to, like we tend to make it, it's a lot more absorbable, and people can say, "Oh, I can do that too." Which is where the idea that project management made practical came from, where it's
Mm.
anybody can do project management.
Yeah,
It's just, to what extent are you actually doing?
well said. And based on all the work that you've done and the research you must have done for your book, what are some of the common mistakes you have seen organizations make in project management?
um, I'm trying to keep this brief because I could probably do an entire hour on
I
mistakes
know.
in project
Yes.
management.
Hmm.
I think the biggest, without a doubt, mistake that organizations make is they blow past planning.
Hmm.
Um, Project management, once you get a project, everybody's excited. They want it to move forward. It's like it's an idea, and they want to see that idea come to fruition. And one of the biggest mistakes, one of the worst mistakes that organizations can make is to give we're always given deadlines, but to give a deadline to the extent where you have to really skip a lot of the planning that goes into the project, set yourself up for failure at that point.
Hmm.
If you have no roadmap whatsoever or no general plan of what you're going to do, and you're kind of just winging it, and this is, don't even get me started on like the folks that throw agile around,
Mm-hmm.
because that's not being agile. You're just kind of winging it and figuring out as you go. When we do stuff like that, you're going to fail. You're going to run into problems. You're going to run into, mistakes are going to be made.
Hmm.
Stakeholders are going to get mad. It's not going to go well. And
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that we need to spend, months planning, but we need some reasonable amount of time to put a plan together before we actually start executing on it.
Hmm. Well said. But you spoke of stakeholders. Uh, with multiple stakeholders, probably with different priorities, how do you address the challenge of so many different priorities?
Delicately. Um, Stakeholder management is essential.
Hmm.
One of the things that I kind of preach in my talks is I'm a firm believer in what I call the new iron triangle in project management. It's stakeholder management, risk management, and communication management. If you can manage those aspects, you can manage anything. And with stakeholders, they're going to make or break you on a project. So you have to be willing to be flexible. You have to adapt your style to different stakeholders. You have to listen to stakeholders. And unfortunately, a lot of times we have to kind of play broker or mediator between stakeholders who have competing priorities or competing objectives. And it oftentimes puts a project manager in an awkward spot, but that's the job. If we don't do that, they're just going to continue to push forward their objectives, and you're either not going to get anything done, or you're going to get things done that don't align with what the overall objective of the project is. So it's not an easy thing, but if you can manage it, you can be a very successful project.
Well said. Tell me, Zach, what role do tools and technology play in making project management practical, and where could they fall short?
So tools and technology are, I think, so we always like to look at project management with like two sides of a coin. There's an art and a science of project management. The tools and technology can help you with the science, and that's your schedules, your budgets, your risk logs, anything that's going to give you that data that helps you manage the project. And it can be incredibly useful tools, especially now, when we have, AI is now in the mix. So we have AI tools that take meeting minutes now. They take, some of them actually send out emails on your behalf, right? That is a huge time saver for a project manager. Yeah. All of that administrative work can be handed off to technology. And if it can be handed off to technology appropriately, huge time saver. Project manager can do much more. Where it can fall short, though, is if you rely on that. If a machine or the technology is starting to develop soft skills where we can deliver difficult messages to like our executives, we have way bigger problems than we are in trouble as a society. And if you are if you're expecting technology to do those types of things, you're not going to be able to communicate appropriately to your stakeholders to be successful.
Amazing. A few minutes back, you were telling me about your iron triangle, or the risk iron triangle. And one of the corners you said was the importance of communication. Tell me, what role does communication play in successful project management? And give me an example if you can.
It is, you cannot, in my humble opinion, you cannot be successful in project management without communication. I have seen seasoned project managers who were really good at, staying on schedule, staying on budget, fail miserably because they were unable to communicate with stakeholders. Especially now, especially if you're dealing in technology or more of a specialized or technical field, there are so many moving parts that happen with a project. If you don't communicate, somebody's going to miss something or think that nothing's happening, and your stakeholders are going to get upset, and the whole project's going to get blown up. I think there's a lot, I can list a lot of examples, but I think a good example was, I can use myself, I always like to use myself as mistakes I've made is, I had a very, very, very challenging customer a company ago. And they were every possible step of the way, they would fight me, or disagree with me. And it was to the point where I could say the sky is blue, and they would look up and say, no, the sky is yellow. And I got to the point where I knew that if I brought something forward, it was just going to be a fight. And whether it was laziness or frustration, I just didn't want to deal with it. So I stopped communicating certain things, knowing that I could probably get them done, and they were eventually going to find out. But by the time they found out, things would be done, and we'd be okay. And it just didn't work out that way. They
Mm.
found out about these things. They weren't happy. The opposite happened. It was a lot of rework. So that would be my example of
Fascinating.
a very poor communication.
Yeah, yeah. What a great example. Thank you. Um, Tell me, what is the role of emotional intelligence when you talk of successful project management?
Again, it's definitely essential.
Mm.
In my for let me back up. For the more complex of a project gets, the more crucial it is to have that level of emotional intelligence.
Mm.
Going along with that, art and science, people had always asked me, do you need both? Do you need the art, the soft skills, the emotional intelligence? And when I first started in this field, I answered differently. I said no. I said you can get by just doing science. But what happens for a project manager is you peak at some point. If you don't have emotional intelligence, if you don't know how to work with other people, if you don't know how to read people, you're going to get to a level of complexity on a project there that you will not be asked to manage because
Mm.
there's too many moving parts, there's too many personalities involved. Your leadership's not going to trust you
Yeah.
because you don't have that EQ
Mm.
and that emotional intelligence.
Mm.
And so that for that regard, it's essential if you want to keep advancing.
Very interesting. What lessons from your book are especially relevant for startups and small businesses?
Startups and small businesses, I would say, keep it simple. Um, doesn't mean skip through everything and don't have any sort of process, but it means start with the basics
Mm.
in project management. Scope, schedule, budgets. If you have do your project managers have a scope for the project that they're working on? Do they have a schedule? Do they have a budget?
Mm.
If the answer to that is no, start there.
Mm.
Don't start with implementation of this major project management tool software that's going
Mm.
to save the world for you.
Yeah.
Don't start with these super complex matrices and these diagrams. We don't need to do that. Start with the basics and you'll get there. You'll get there really quickly, but if you don't have
Mm.
that framework, that backbone, there's going to be too much going on to be able to wrangle that in.
Mm. Amazing. Zach, you work in healthcare IT. How does project management differ in a healthcare environment compared to so many others?
In healthcare, it's interesting, especially when you work at an organization that is more internal facing. And what I mean by that is I work at a hospital, so my stakeholders are all people I work with.
Mm.
I used to work at an organization where we sold products or services to the public or
Yeah.
customers. That's a different ballgame, right? When you work with a selling organization, you you produce something or you deliver something and then you move
Mm.
on.
Yeah.
In healthcare, a lot of times though, you're working with people that you're always going to be working with, or you're working towards something that's also not about selling products or services. We're working towards producing patient care or a
Mm.
patient experience.
Mm.
So it's the mindset, the objectives differ, right? I've it's I hate this. It's going to sound super lame and kind of corny, but it does make you feel like there is a greater kind of purpose for
Mhm.
the role you are playing in that
Right. Right.
versus just I'm implementing something and I'm moving on.
Fascinating. And that's a great perspective. Thank you. I have time for three more questions for you. How can
Yeah.
organizations embed practical project management practices into their culture?
First and foremost is I think they need to train it. I think it's implied a lot or it's assumed that people have these project management skills.
Hmm.
I think even for seasoned project managers, if an organization has a general idea of how they want their projects run,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that doesn't mesh.
Yeah.
Somebody with 30 years of experience comes into an organization that is a little less mature and they
Hmm.
want things done a little bit differently. That's not going to work. So whatever the project methodology is at the organization should be trained, train the staff up. Secondly, I'd say give them a mechanism to operate in, whether it's, you're working off of spreadsheets or documents, or you have technology, whatever. Allow them to operate in that manner. Don't train them to be a project manager and then get mad at them if they ask you to sign a project charter, or if they show you a status report that says we're slightly off track. And then third is 100% make sure expectations on project managers are known. If it's an organization where your project managers are also expected to be subject matter experts and get their hands dirty, that needs to be known up front. Otherwise, a project manager is going to go forward acting like a traditional project manager, and they're going to fail on expectations. So that would be my three.
Yeah. Great response. How do you see the role of a project manager evolving into that of a leader?
I think by the nature of what we do in project management, we're leaders, whether we want to be or not. Especially when you're, the majority, if not all, project managers are managing people that they don't have any direct authority over. And the only way to really be successful in that is if you have leadership skills, if you're able to be that leader. It translates, in my opinion, directly, because if your organization if they watch you and you're able to manage people you don't have direct authority over, the logical thought process is, wow, like if we give them formal authority, they're probably going to be pretty good at it. That's how I think it to me, it directly translates.
Well said. And my last question for you, Zach, could you share an example from your book where a project succeeded or failed because of a leadership decision?
So I'm trying to remember the antidotes I gave from the book. I think the biggest one of memory that I can remember from a decision was we were rolling out. We were changing everybody's email about 6 years ago, and I realized that doesn't sound that intense, but when you're talking about 10, 20, almost 20,000 people changing their technology that's their backbone of what they do all day to communicate with each other, it is pretty extensive. It's terrifying. It scared everybody. And we had been working with Microsoft for months, years almost. And the idea was, when we did this, we would do it in phases. And when we did it, we would have the vendor kind of around to help us support our staff. And about a couple months before we were going to do that, one of our leaders, looking through our risks, looking through what the progress had been and where we were seeing a lot of the hesitation, put forth this idea that, why don't we just take our entire IT department and deploy them throughout the health system and they will then act as that support. That way you're not relying on a vendor. Your staff is going to see familiar faces. And this was the first time in my career that I've ever seen a leadership team take data, immediately analyze it, like quickly analyze it, not get stuck in this analysis paralysis, make the call and make the decision. And within weeks, we were mobilized to be able to do that. And even though, we had some hiccups like all projects do, it was a wildly successful deployment by making.
Amazing. What a story. Thank you for sharing. But on that note, Zach, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you also for speaking to me about your book, Project Management Made Practical. I think I picked up some very, very interesting tips from you on project management, understood project management, and you made it really so simple by saying that every one of us is a project manager. Thank you again for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Oh, thank you very much, and thanks for having me. Good luck to you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.